Just when John thought the war was over, the real battle began. Karen wasn't finished, not by a long shot, and this time she brought backup. A lawyer, a camera crew, and a twisted plan to destroy everything he loved. But secrets buried at the fence line would unravel her scheme faster than she ever expected. Now, with the town watching, John must outsmart her one final time. Because on this farm, justice grows deep, and revenge runs even deeper. John Peterson had always lived a simple life. His farm, nestled on the outskirts of a small town, was his pride and sanctuary. Each morning he woke to the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, the distant hum of birds greeting the day. The rhythm of his life was steady, comforting. Yet, for the past 6 months, there was one thing that kept disrupting the peace he'd worked so hard to preserve: a woman named Karen and her sleek, black Porsche. It wasn't the car itself that irked John. It was the fact that Karen, who lived a few miles away in a grand, gated mansion, had taken a disturbing interest in his property. At first, he thought it was a one-off incident. But no, day after day, Karen would pull up onto his land and park her car in the same spot, right in front of his barn where he needed access for his tractor. She'd simply ignore his polite requests to move it. "Just leave it there for a while, John," she'd say with that smile, as if it were her right to use his land. "It's not like it's hurting anyone," but it did hurt. The car blocked his work, inconvenienced his daily chores, and most of all it made him feel small. Karen, with her perfect nails and cold eyes, treated the farm like an extension of her playground, an unwelcome addition to the quiet serenity that John had built his life around. She'd leave it there for hours, sometimes even days, as though her time was more important than his. The first few times, John had approached her, calmly. "Ma'am, could you please move your car? I need to get through." But every time Karen would brush him off with an excuse or a condescending remark. "You farmers are always so uptight," she had said once, rolling her eyes. "It's just a parking spot." But that "just a parking spot" had been the crack in the dam. Each time Karen parked there, the frustration built. John was a patient man, but even he had limits. He would stand at his front door, watching her car gleam under the afternoon sun, gnashing his teeth, the resentment swirling in his gut like a storm waiting to break. Today, it was different. Today, something inside him snapped. Enough was enough. He walked over to his barn, hands clenched into fists, the faintest hint of a plan forming in his mind. And just as he reached the barn door, he caught sight of that damn Porsche again, parked in its usual spot. His heart raced, and his mind was set. This was it. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. John couldn't help but replay the memories over and over, each encounter with Karen seared into his mind like a fresh wound. The first time had been subtle, almost innocent. He had just finished plowing the east field when he spotted the Porsche, its glossy paint reflecting the late afternoon sun, parked right next to his barn. At first he thought maybe she was lost, but when he approached, Karen rolled down the window, her sunglasses perched on the edge of her nose, flashing him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, John," she said with that infuriating sweetness in her voice. "Mind if I park here for a while? I'm just taking a break from the city. It's so peaceful here." John had wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her it wasn't a parking lot and that her luxury car wasn't welcome on his land, but the words never left his mouth. Instead, he nodded stiffly. "Sure, just don't block the way," he muttered, turning to leave. He wasn't one to pick a fight, and he knew what she wanted: someone to bend, someone to tolerate her whims. The next week, she was back. This time she parked even closer to his barn, right where he'd need to drive his tractor. He'd been preparing for the harvest and he needed every inch of space. "Karen," he called out, his patience thinning. "You can't keep doing this. I've got work to do." "Oh, John, don't be so dramatic," she responded, her voice oozing condescension. "It's just a few hours. I'll be gone before you know it." But it wasn't just a few hours. It was the same routine every time. Karen would show up, park her car, and ignore the mounting irritation in John's voice. Each time he asked her to move it, she'd smile that fake smile and act like she was doing him a favor by leaving. But the thing that gnawed at John was her complete disregard for his life, his farm, his space. It wasn't just the inconvenience anymore, it was the principle. How dare she treat him like he was the one who didn't matter? How dare she waltz onto his land, expecting him to simply accept her presence? His thoughts were conflicted. Should he confront her? Should he call the authorities? The internal struggle twisted inside him. John wasn't a man of confrontation, but every time she parked that damn Porsche, it felt like a violation. He could feel his patience fraying, inch by inch, like a rope slowly being unraveled. Something inside him was changing, hardening, and he knew. He was on the verge of doing something drastic. Each encounter left him more bitter than the last. But today, with the Porsche parked there once again, he knew that the time for tolerating Karen's behavior was over. John stood at the edge of his porch, watching the sun sink low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. The peace of the evening was shattered by the unmistakable purr of an engine. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as the black Porsche rolled onto his property once again. Karen. The car slid into the familiar spot, right in front of the barn, blocking the narrow path John used to get his tractor out. The tires of the Porsche crushed the fresh grass beneath them, the weight of her entitlement palpable in every turn of the wheel. John's breath quickened, a simmering anger rising within him. This wasn't just an inconvenience anymore. It was a deliberate challenge. He marched down the steps, his boots crunching against the gravel. As he neared the car, Karen stepped out, adjusting her sunglasses with that same overly casual smile, as if it was just another normal day. "Hey, John," she greeted, her tone light, but there was a noticeable edge to it. "You've been looking grumpy lately. You really need to relax." John took a deep breath, pushing down the urge to snap. "Karen, you can't keep parking here. This is my farm. I need this space." Karen didn't even look at him, her fingers brushing against the sleek door of her car as she leaned back against it. "Oh, relax. It's just a little spot. It's not like you're using it." "I am using it," John said, his voice tightening. "I need access to that barn. I've got work to do." "Pfft." Karen waved him off dismissively. "I'm sure you can find somewhere else to park your tractor. You farmers are always so dramatic about these things. It's just a few hours. Chill." Her tone was the last straw. The casual disrespect in her voice, the way she treated him like he was just a nuisance, sent a shockwave of frustration through him. Chill? How dare she? The sweat on his brow wasn't from the heat. It was from the simmering anger inside him that was now on the verge of boiling over. John clenched his fists, feeling the familiar ache in his palms. The rage he'd been holding back for weeks, months, finally snapped. His eyes flickered over to the tractor, sitting idle in the barn, just a few feet away. The thought of moving it by hand, inch by painstaking inch, was too much to bear without another word. He turned on his heel, his boots digging into the dirt as he stormed back toward the barn. Karen didn't call after him. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew she'd crossed a line. But John wasn't going to tolerate it any longer. This time, he was going to do something about it. As his fingers gripped the barn door, he felt a cold, sharp resolve. He wasn't going to beg. He wasn't going to ask politely again. This time, Karen would feel the weight of his frustration. He knew what had to be done. John slammed the barn door behind him, the sound reverberating like a gunshot through the still air. His pulse hammered in his ears, drowning out the usual quiet of the farm. He paced the floor, the crunch of his boots echoing in the hollow space. His mind raced. What now? He had tried being reasonable. He'd tried the polite approach, and every time Karen just walked all over him. Enough was enough. His gaze fell on the tractor, resting against the far wall. A familiar machine, one that had helped him cultivate this land for years. But today, it wasn't just a tool. It was his weapon. His eyes narrowed as a plan began to take shape. The idea hit him with the force of a lightning strike. What if he could send her a message she couldn't ignore? The corner of his mouth twitched into a grim smile. He was tired of Karen treating his farm like her personal playground. She wanted to park here, to assert her dominance over his property? Fine. He'd make sure she'd never forget it. He moved to the far corner of the barn, where he kept a stack of old lumber. With quick, decisive movements, he began dragging it out into the open. He'd been preparing for a project just like this for years. He just hadn't known it yet. The wood was rough-hewn, strong enough to withstand the elements. He would build something imposing, something undeniable. A giant, in-your-face, no trespassing sign. Something that would scream at Karen every time she stepped foot on his property. As he worked, the tension inside him grew. He could feel the weight of what he was about to do. This wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. This was about his dignity, his land, his right to live in peace. The more he saw the sign take shape, the more it felt like it was meant to be. His blood pressure rose with every nail he drove into the wood. It was almost cathartic. The simple act of building something to defy her made his chest feel lighter, even though the consequences of his actions hung in the air like a storm cloud. But there was something else gnawing at him. Something he couldn't shake. A small voice in the back of his head. What if this goes too far? What if Karen, with her sharp tongue and vicious streak, retaliated? He had no illusions about her. She wasn't the type to back down easily. John paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from his brow. He could almost hear her voice now, that mocking tone. "You really think a sign is going to stop me?" His grip tightened on the hammer. Maybe not, he thought, but it's a start. As the sign came together, so did his resolve. He wasn't just going to stand by anymore. Tonight Karen would see what it meant to mess with John Peterson. The tractor roared to life with a deafening sound breaking the silence of the evening. John slid into the seat, the weight of his decision pressing on his chest. He glanced at the sign one last time, the words carved into it like a declaration of war. No trespassing. He was committed now, and there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension as John fired up the tractor, the engine roaring to life with a low, guttural growl that echoed across the farm. The vibration beneath him was like the steady pulse of a beating heart, urging him forward. The sign, now fully constructed and leaning against the barn wall, stood like a monument to his resolve. It was massive, crude, and the words, "No trespassing," loomed large, defiant, impossible to ignore. With a deep breath, John shifted into gear and began towing the giant sign out of the barn. The wheels of the tractor churned through the dirt, sending plumes of dust into the air as he made his way toward the spot where Karen always parked her Porsche. Each turn of the wheels felt like a small victory, each lurch of the machine bringing him closer to the moment of reckoning. As he approached the area, John couldn't help but chuckle to himself. The sight of the tractor, with its weathered steel frame, pulling the massive "No Trespassing" sign behind it, was almost absurd. It was the kind of sight that belonged in a cartoon. But to John, it was a statement, loud, unyielding, and impossible to ignore. The sign, much larger than he'd originally anticipated, swung behind him like a pendulum, its weight causing the tractor to dip slightly with each tug. The squeal of the wheels on the rough terrain added to the soundtrack of his growing satisfaction. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of control, like he was finally taking back what was his. He'd never been the type of man to lash out in anger. Hell, he'd spent years keeping his temper in check. But today was different. Today, Karen would learn that there were consequences to her actions. As he reached the familiar patch of land where Karen's Porsche usually sat, his gaze flicked toward the barn. He could see the car's outline in the distance, the sleek black curves standing out against the fading light of the evening. But Karen was nowhere to be seen. Perfect. John had no idea where she was, but he wasn't about to waste time wondering. He eased the tractor into position, pulling the sign up behind it and angling it just right. The weight of the thing made it feel like he was hauling an ancient relic, something with purpose, something that would outlast all of them. With one final shove, he locked the sign in place, the words now facing the exact spot where Karen had always parked. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight. The sign was impossible to ignore, standing tall and imposing, a direct challenge to her. For the first time in a long time, John felt powerful, invincible. But the victory was short-lived. The unsettling thought struck him. What if she's not done yet? What if this only makes it worse? He shook it off, staring at the sign, steeling himself for what was to come. She couldn't ignore this. She couldn't just walk away. Could she? The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon when John heard the unmistakable purr of Karen's Porsche approaching. The familiar sound grated on his nerves, but today he was ready. His heart beat steady as he stood by the tractor, arms crossed, watching the road. His grip tightened around his sleeves, his mind racing with the images of what would happen next. And then, there she was, Karen, gliding down the dirt path toward the farm, her eyes already locked on the massive "No" trespassing sign. She slammed on the brakes as her Porsche came to a screeching halt, mere inches from the sign. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her lips parting in shock, then curling into a sneer. John felt a small thrill of satisfaction at the sight of her stunned expression. The sign had done its job. But that satisfaction quickly gave way to the cold realization that the confrontation was inevitable. Karen's door flew open with a dramatic flourish, her heels clicking against the dirt as she stormed toward him. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice shrill and sharp. "You can't just put this garbage up on my spot." John stood firm, his body unmoving like a wall. He wasn't backing down. "It's not your spot, Karen. It's my property, and I've asked you more than enough times to stop parking here." Her eyes blazed with indignation, her face twisting into a mask of fury. "Are you seriously doing this? You think you can just put up a fence and a sign and make me go away? I've got a Porsche, for God's sake. Do you know how expensive this car is? Do you really think you can treat me like this?" The entitlement in her voice was suffocating. It was the same arrogant tone she always used, as if her wealth and status gave her the right to do whatever she pleased. John's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice even, calm. "You're on my land, Karen. You've been asked more than once to move that car, but you ignored me. This is my final word on it. No more parking here." Her lips trembled with rage as she stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air between them. "You don't know who you're messing with. I'll have this sign taken down in minutes. You think you can stop me? You're nothing but a farmer. I own more in my closet than you make in a year." John's eyes hardened. He was done with her games. "You're not going to do anything, Karen. This is happening. It's my farm, and I'm not moving." For a moment, the air between them crackled with tension. Karen's chest heaved as she glared at him, her nostrils flaring. She opened her mouth, no doubt ready to unleash another tirade of threats. But John didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his hands steady at his sides, as the weight of the situation hung in the air like a storm about to break. But just as Karen took a step back, her eyes darting to her phone, she hesitated. Something was different. something had changed in her calculation. She wasn't as confident now. The power dynamic had shifted. John felt it. The moment she realized she couldn't simply bulldoze over him anymore. And that realization, that subtle crack in her composure, made it all worthwhile. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world.